All right, so I'm going to quickly go through my little journey around the world. Took me 5 weeks. I'm glad to be home. 5 weeks is way too long to be traveling, but I did it anyway, and it was pretty fun. So first of all, I went to Lisbon, and then I went to Gig City. Uh, Lisbon was pretty nice. The weather was great. There were really actually trams. Um, yeah, so lots of speakers, a lot of talks. I definitely didn't see as many as I should have, and I haven't used the Hoover app to go and catch up either. But um, they will announce the talks, I think, online fairly shortly. But I was surprised that it was, yeah, nearly 700 people there. That was pretty great. So quick overcap. Zach and I did a training uh, the first day of the conference before all the talks started. Went really well. We sort of refined our training, taking a 3-day training packed into one 6-hour session and made it a lot more interactive. We're looking to do this in Australia, so yeah, if you're interested in doing an ASH training, let me know, because we probably will do one before the end of the year.
What do you think that's scared of?
It's a good question. No, he doesn't. But maybe it's the combo of the big bushy Viking beard with the no hair look. So I'm just going to quickly go through some of the talks that were really good. I mean, there were 50 talks. I'm not going to cover all of them. They'll eventually come online. Look, I think the keynotes were the highlight. Chris started off the conference with a talk about, the Elixir AI and ML NX ecosystem, he's calling it. Basically, he declared it prod ready. He's using it in prod for his company, is it Amplified AI? Yes, Amplified. And effectively, they're doing patent searches for lawyers and people doing patents to make sure that they're actually doing sort of semantic searches and finding stuff. Because what they're doing now currently is like keyword, really dumb keyword searches. And so semantic search through patents is what they do. But really his whole talk, and it was pretty long, it was sort of like over an hour, went through the entire ecosystem and basically declared it pretty great for doing production stuff. And he talked about how they used it in Amplified. And basically they'd eradicated all Python and got a lot of efficiencies out of it. And one of the big takeaways was reducing their AWS spend by 50% on a lot of the stuff they were doing, which is pretty huge. And, I think the basic premise is that Elixir is now and will probably continue to be even better, a great way to productionize AI and ML workloads. The talk is on YouTube, so if you don't take a picture of that, you can search it up. It's a pretty great talk. Another great one was Chris Record's talk about Flame. Basically, the idea of Flame, if you haven't seen some of the news about it, is take existing code that you've got in hopefully monolith and basically wrap that existing code in a function and then deploy that function without really doing any extra stuff. So no extra complexity, no function as a service nonsense. Flame is it. Fleeting Lambda applications for modular execution was the backronym, I think. But it's pretty cool. It's worth taking a look at the blog posts, and the GitHub repo is there. I haven't used it yet, but it's definitely pretty interesting. Jose did not a type talk, which was novel. So he went through the entire Gang of Four design patterns book, which who's seen that, read it, knows about it. Basically, a lot of those patterns turn out to be ways to fix broken things in OO languages, but they're still applicable to Elixir. So he goes through the entire set of Gang of Four patterns and sort of breaks them down and goes which are still relevant. The spoiler alert is that mediated facade and strategy is still good, and you can use all of the Elixir language features like pattern matching, anonymous functions, behaviors and protocols to get all of the things that you would otherwise get. All the patterns were you didn't really need them anyway because functional programming generally takes care of it. That talk is up as well. He sort of had this graph, which was interesting. It's sort of like, describing language features in terms of simplicity as a trade-off against expressiveness. Watch the talk, that will make more sense. Barnabas had already done his talk and given us a preview. He didn't change it that much, I don't think, but he talked about what Ash brings to the table when developing Elixir applications. He talked about how he'd migrated a big node application that wasn't working so well to Elixir and improved things and made it, a safe and quick migration. He sort of went through a hello world sort of intro to Ash and then really went through some of the extensions and some of the ways you can customize it and use escape hatches to do stuff that Ash may not support. So worth a watch when it comes out. Zach did his talk. Is he less scary there? A little bit. Basically, he's done this talk a bunch of times now. The first bit, the story of a function, was the same as his talk last year at Elixir Conf US. But he really went into more detail later about, how imperative code imposes artificial constraints. The beginning bit was how does a Phoenix context function without a lot of guidance or opinions evolve over time, and that seemed to resonate with everyone. When you're starting with a simple sort of API function that is the interface to your application, that Phoenix isn't, what does that look like? You tend to start with nothing and then end up piling, and then a lot of different features that you need, like sorting, filtering, pagination, etc., etc., etc. And it tends to look different for everyone. And it tends to look different across your application as well. So Ash solves that with declarative portable expressions, enables greater composability, and effectively, at the end of the day, is the missing domain layer for your Phoenix or any application. So the next ElixirConf EU, I would recommend going if you have the chance, is in May next year in Krakow. And it's virtual as well. So in between doing Lisbon and going to Geek City, I dropped past Greensboro where Zach lives. We hung out for a bit, and I also went to the home, what's it called? Kind of the spiritual home of Ash in Asheville, which is in the Blue Ridge Mountains in North Carolina. Pretty beautiful. But I did go to a bar that has some pretty interestingly named beers. And if you note the alcohol percentages on the ones on the right, I didn't try those because I was driving like you have to do in America. But I was intrigued. I like the names. The magnificent dissonance of expressive non sequitur. So, yeah, I did have a photo of somewhere. I got lost on a mountain, stuck in a rainstorm on the top of the mountains near Asheville. That was pretty fun. I guess. So, Gig City. Zach and I did a road trip from Greensboro, North Carolina, 6 hours through the Appalachian Mountains to Chattanooga in Tennessee, and we arrived at Gig City. And yes, there is a Chattanooga choo-choo. It's known for its trains, and that is the best representation of one on top of a building. Was that where you went? Track 29 or whatever it was? So yeah, we did another training, fast track to full stack. Went pretty well. Zach looking more studious and less scary than this one. Yeah, we had another great set of students, lots of great questions. Training went pretty well. Meanwhile, while we were training on the sort of first of the days of the conferences, there was Nerves Conf, which because we were training, we didn't get to go to. But as I was zipping through the other room, I did take a photo of Pal Kinney doing a talk about driving boats autonomously with nerves. There was a whole nerves conf. It was pretty interesting. I cover what Frank had sort of updated on the nerves ecosystem. That was pretty good. So these were all the talks. I'm going to cover a couple of them. They're all really good, and going to, a small regional conference, which Gig City is, was pretty great. It's a bit more intimate. Single track is nice. So if you miss a talk, you're only missing one talk at a time rather than three in a lump. But yeah, all the talks were really, really good, and single track is nice. We're just going to cover a couple of them. Brian Hunter, who works at HCA Healthcare, who was the primary sponsor, did a great talk. If you haven't seen the water park talk, it's well worth looking up on YouTube. He's got a couple of them. It's really interesting what they're doing. HCA Healthcare runs 10% of US healthcare, and they sit in the middle, effectively streaming all of the messages that come in from all of the different systems. They alert on them for like life-saving alerts, and it's a massive volume. And if they don't get alerts out for, hey, your blood pressure's dropped, or your pulse is not in the right situation, or any number of things that could be life-threatening, they're not actually it's not fast enough to have a database. So they are the database, and they basically have this crazy setup of nodes where everything is in a gen server in memory, because going out into disk would be too slow. So that's pretty cool. He talked about poker yoke, which is a Japanese term that I had not heard of, but it was about making things effectively foolproof so that you couldn't make mistakes. He basically went through some of the ways that you can mistake proof things. And yeah, if mistakes are made, it's actually a problem with the system, and it's better to prefer to have systems and processes that are unable to be broken over actually asking humans to be diligent constantly. So he recommended the checklist manifesto, which is pretty good. Frank talked about like a whole update of the Nerves ecosystem. I thought this was an interesting thing that I hadn't heard of. Nerves Hub certainly is an open source hub for managing Nerves devices out in the field. It looks pretty robust, and they've done all of the things that they'd set out to do for this year, which is pretty cool. And then there was actually Nerves Cloud as well, which Josh Kalgonis in New Zealand is looking at, making a hosted version of that, which is pretty cool. They recorded the talks, so I'm not sure when they're going to come out, but I hope they will. Another really interesting one was this one, which was Chris Miller did a 48-hour, I think it's called Spawn Fest. The plan was to use Elm for its great type checking and compilation errors to effectively get a ChatGPT or similar model. Can't remember which model it was. Yeah, ChatGPT. To write Elm, and basically when it compiles, you could move on. So it was like write Elm, compile it. If it errors, fix it until it compiles, and then see what happens. Pretty ambitious. He described his journey really well, and it was an interesting idea of getting the code to be written automatically in a loop by an LLM. So that was a pretty cool talk. He basically stayed up all night getting it working. But yeah, cool talk, interesting idea. Zach did his talk again, but the difference was at the end of his talk, he deployed Ash 3 live on stage, which was certainly a novel idea, and then took this photo when he was done. It took longer to type his hex password into it than to actually do all this stuff. Then he spent the next few hours making sure all the packages are up to date. So Ash 3 is out. It was a pretty great event to have it done live on stage. Another one of the announcements is there is an Ash book on the way, which is very exciting. Rebecca is busily writing that, and the Prague Progs will be publishing it hopefully before the end of the year. I believe that at about 75% done, it goes into the beta, and so should be out soon. Lars Vikman was there and did a pretty nice, I guess, summary of the Elixir ecosystem, the conference, and so forth. That was a pretty good way to end the conference. And yeah, we then went and did some things around Chattanooga. Chattanooga's really nice, very green, lots of mountains around the city. This is the famous pedestrian bridge. I couldn't figure out why it was famous, but it is. Everyone loves it.
Did you shoot that thing?
No, I did not. Tennessee is also known for its bourbon whiskeys. Did a flight. They were really nice. I was quite impressed. And that's Chattanooga, from the mountain that Bruce and Maggie took us up afterwards. And you can see quite a lot of states all in one Eiffel, and I can't name which states they are, but you could probably see about 3 or 4 from there, because it's on the border of North Carolina, Alabama, Kentucky, so on. I don't remember them all, but yeah, there's a point where you can see 7 states. How did I do for time? I think I did all right. Questions? Any questions online? Because no one's talking here. Oh, yeah. I've read some of it. I have the book. Yeah, the affordances. I do actually remember sitting by the door in a diner in San Francisco on the way home, and they have handles on the door, and one of them was locked, and people would try at least 2 before they got it right. And it was exactly that from that book. You know, affordances about a label saying push pull on the door that was open would have been very helpful.
So the book says that push pull lanes.
Yeah. Yep. And it's wild. So his example was in that talk, it was sort of like aligning a plate, and it was make the, I guess, the base of the plate, make it incorrect to have it oriented incorrectly. And so don't rely on the human to get it right. Just make the systems and the processes force you to be right, and it's obvious when it's wrong. So yeah, that was a really interesting talk. Cool. All right, if there are no more questions online, it's nearly 8 and we got a dash. Thanks everyone.